Let's talk about an architecture that's being built all around us, one that's actively shaping how you think. The thing is, its most important feature is that you're not supposed to see it. So today, we're going to make that invisible architecture visible.
I mean, you know that feeling, right? When your search engine practically reads your mind, or your news feed serves up that one thing you just can't resist clicking. It's super convenient, for sure. But what's actually happening behind the curtain?
Well, that's our goal here today. We're going to pull that curtain back so you can really see how your digital world is being constructed and, in turn, how it's constructing you.
To really get this, let's imagine someone named Sarah. Her experience probably sounds pretty familiar. Her day is just this seamless flow of AI assistance, from morning news digests to her pre-sorted emails. But what started out as just a helpful tool has slowly, quietly turned into something else.
So, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this? You've probably heard of Daniel Kahneman's models, right? System 1, that's our fast gut reaction thinking. System 2 is our slow, deliberate, analytical brain. But what if there's a whole other layer? Researchers are starting to call it System 0. And here's the absolute crucial difference. It doesn't happen in your brain. It's the AI-driven thinking that's happening out in your environment, shaping information before it ever reaches you.
This external thinking works through something called cognitive infrastructure. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like the roads or the power grid for our minds. It's this foundational layer, the search engines, the social feeds, that quietly sets the boundaries for what we can even know in our digital lives.
And this infrastructure is not passive at all. First, it's filtering your reality for you before you even see it. Then it's learning your patterns to predict what you'll do next so it can personalize and, guide your thoughts. But here's the real kicker, the most powerful part. The better it gets at all of this, the more invisible it becomes. Now, all of this has a direct impact on something called epistemic agency. It sounds like a complex term, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just your power to decide for yourself what's important, what's true, and what's worth paying attention to. It's basically the foundation of independent thought.
So here's the critical trade-off that's happening every second you're online. These AI systems automate what's called relevance judgment. That simple, very human task of deciding what matters to me right now gets outsourced to the machine. And just like that, your agency, your power to choose, starts to shift away from you and over to the algorithm.
So what does it actually feel like to live inside this designed world? Let's zoom in and look at the impact on 3 different scales. For you as an individual, for us as a group, and for all of us as a society.
Okay, let's jump back to Sarah. As her own thinking patterns started to sync up with her tools, her search for meaning became, externally scaffolded. It was being propped up by AI. And the result? Sure, she was thinking faster, but was she still thinking for herself? And that right there is the impact on the individual level. We start to develop a cognitive dependency. Put simply, our brains begin to lean on that constant algorithmic help just to work through complex ideas. Okay, so what happens when this dependency scales up to a whole town? Well, one mayor tried to boost civic engagement with a new AI-powered town forum, but the algorithm, which is just hungry for engagement, turned a space for thoughtful debate into a marketplace of outrage. Nuance got buried under these loud, emotional sound bites. So the impact at the collective level is a fragmented public debate. The very tools that were meant to connect us end up sorting us into our own little echo chambers, fracturing the shared reality that a healthy democracy really needs to survive. All right, let's zoom out one last time to the societal level. Imagine a national audit that discovers something pretty alarming. Wealthy districts have these incredible AI tools that are supercharging learning, while poorer districts are stuck with old, outdated systems. This uncovers the societal impact, a brand new kind of inequality, cognitive inequality. The gap isn't just about who has a laptop anymore. It's about who has access to the advanced infrastructures that literally structure how we think, creating this much deeper and way more profound divide. So, if these systems are designed from the ground up to be invisible, how on earth do you even begin to study them? Well, it turns out researchers have a really clever way to make the architect's blueprint visible. It's called the infrastructure breakdown method, and it works on a simple principle. You only really notice a road when it's full of potholes. So first, you let people get totally used to their seamless AI assistant. Then you just switch it off. By watching the cognitive struggle that happens next, that breakdown, you can actually measure the exact shape of the dependency that was completely invisible just a moment before. Okay, so understanding this architecture is the huge first step. The next is figuring out how we can start to reclaim our own mental space, how we can become co-architects of our minds, not just residents living in them. So what can be done on a large scale? The research puts forward a pretty radical idea. What if we regulated this cognitive infrastructure like a public utility, like water or electricity? The reasoning is pretty straightforward. Because it structures thought itself for huge populations, it creates dependencies that are really hard to opt out of, and it centralizes an immense amount of power over our minds in the hands of very few companies. But beyond big regulations, what can you do personally? You can start to ask your architect. As you're using your digital tools, just pause for a second and ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this making me think more deeply or just react faster? What am I not seeing right now because of this filter? And, maybe most importantly, who actually benefits most when my attention is guided right here? Ultimately, the choice we're all facing is a really profound one. Are we going to build these incredibly powerful systems to serve human flourishing and wisdom, or are we just going to let them optimize us for simple metrics like engagement and efficiency, things that might have very little to do with a life well lived? So, I want to leave you with this question. Think about your daily digital routine. What's one tool you use where you can now see the hand of that invisible architect at work, guiding your thoughts? Because really, seeing the architecture is the first step to choosing how you want to live inside of it. Thanks for digging into this with me.